Your career is going to change, whether I was a producer, whether I'm on air, whether I'm a business owner, whether I'm hiring people, your career is going to change, and you're going to, that old adage, you're going to see the same people on the way up as you're going to see on the way down. It's just doing things the right way and respecting people. And I think that relationally, that's the number one thing.
Welcome to Set Life, where we tell stories from our industry. I'm Kelly Leger, and this is Amber Buteau.
Welcome to Set Life. I'm Amber Buteau, and I have a guest host with me today, Dan Rubottom.
Hey, hey.
And I am so excited about our guest that we have on today, Patti Smith. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us on set today and telling stories, and I cannot wait to hear your full story.
Well, great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So on this show, we talk about how people got into this industry and, what their journey kind of was and where they are now and all of that. So for those watching, you've been kind of a legend. You've, 3 Emmys? I
do have 3 Emmys. Yep.
Yes. And, you've really hit some great success in your career. And I would love for everybody to hear how that happened. We're able to see people that have had successes like you and look at it and go like, wow, you just kind of got there. But you have a whole story on, how you arrived in there and all the different things you did to get to that place. So take us back.
Wow. Well, the stories, some of it's luck, some of it's hard work, some of it's just ambition, desire. I think I can actually remember the day I was 11 years old that I decided I wanted to be a sportscaster. I was sitting on my stairs, and I was a big Monday Night Football fan, big Howard Cosell fan. There weren't a lot of women in sports on the air back then. There was Phyllis George, Jane Kennedy, Jane Pauley, not a lot, but I was like, I someday Howard Cosell is going to be too old to do this, and I want to replace Howard Cosell.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
Yeah.
And so I that day is when I decided I was going to be on air. And I used to, as a kid, and you guys probably don't remember this, but they used to have songs that they would play. Like there was one called Mr. Jaws. And like someone would be like an announcer and they'd say, Mr. Jaws, do you have anything to say about that? And then they'd play like a current pop song at the time.
Oh, wow.
So back when I was a kid, I used to make these. Like we'd be on a trip driving from Minnesota to Florida, and I just had my tape recorder in the car, and I'd have to do it on the fly. Like I'd make up an interview, and then while the song was on, I hit record. I'd make these. So I was basically producing back then,
Right.
not really
gosh.
kind of knowing, but that's so I kind of always had that in me. And yeah, I kind of started my career as a producer in Atlanta and rolled into on air over time.
How did that transition? How did you go from behind camera to in front of camera?
Well, I started in Atlanta. I was actually writing for a newspaper called the Sporting Times, and the guy who owned the newspaper was a guy named Bo Bach, and he was an on-air talent as well, and he was the host for a show with the Atlanta Falcons. So I would go with him and literally log tape and just kind of do grunt work to be part of the show. And within a couple years, I was actually producing that show. Oh, wow. And I then fast forward through a lot of stuff, but ended up working for Fox Sports as a producer, produced the pregame show for the Astros, Rockets, Mavericks, Stars, Spurs, all the teams in Texas that were on Fox Sports Southwest. I produced the pregame show for those. And did that for about 5 years, and knew I wanted to get on air, but I really thoroughly enjoyed the storytelling of producing.
Yeah.
And the Astros job was coming open, and I told our executive producer, I would like to do that. And he goes, well, put a tape together for me. And I was like, okay. And by then I had already had relationships with most of the Astros, and, because I've been producing for all those years. So I'm out there every day. I'm, doing feature stories. And so I put my tape together, and instead of just doing like a highlight reel or just kind of a stand-up, I remember it to this day. I went out there, and it was the Florida Marlins were playing, was at the Astrodome. And I'm like, hey, this is Patti Smith, and Brad Penny is pitching for the Marlins tonight, blah, 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 blah. But the real story of the night is Patti Smith is making her television debut, and the entire Astros organization couldn't be more fired up. And I cut to Jeff Bagwell saying, the only reason I'm still here in Houston is because of Patti Smith. She's an integral part of my career, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes to Jerry Hunsaker, and he says, I'm maybe the general manager for the Houston Astros, but I don't make a decision without first consulting with Patti Smith. And so on and on, I had all these Astros saying stuff about me. And so sent the tape up to my executive producer, and he looked at it. He said, it doesn't matter if you're good, bad, or indifferent on the air. Anyone who can get those players to say that, you got the job. And that's how I went on air.
Wow.
Yeah.
Smart thinking.
Yeah.
That
so,
is
and I
smart.
tell kids, if I'm speaking at, high schools or colleges or whatever, what kind of advice do you have for me? And I always tell them, you have to separate yourself. You have to be different. And I'll tell that story because not only was that tape, if he had a pile of tapes on his desk, that one was going to be different. Yeah. And it wasn't that I was any better or whatever, but I used whatever I had, whatever strengths and it was my relationships at the time. Yep. To separate myself and be different from everybody else.
And that's what a producer does, right? Yep. So those are you're working the producer's skills already at that
100%.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a big interest in sports growing up also? Or did you love sports?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I had two brothers. My dad used to, when I was younger, I grew up my early years in Minnesota, and we would go play hockey a lot. My dad's Canadian, and he would line me up against the boards and just fire hockey pucks at me and tell me, you don't ever get out of the way. You can't be scared of a puck. You can't be scared of a ball. And so, I grew up a total athlete, awesome. Softball player mostly, but played all sports.
So you were able to speak the lingo then too as a sportscaster.
Yeah. No, I was a huge sports fan.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a different, I grew up with all brothers too. And there's a different mentality in, let's say, the athletic world. All athletes, I feel like, just think differently. There's just a cadence in the athletes world versus you step over into, maybe the academics or arts and entertainment. Yeah. Or you see a thread of an unspoken communication. And I think that's important to understand if you're going to be interviewing that genre, right? So growing up the way that you grew up and then having a passion, desire for it, that enthusiasm, that unsaid word when they were coming off of a game, you kind of know where their headspace is if you were an athlete before, right? Win, lose, the whole situation. How do you ask that right question? How do you pull those things out of them at that time? So, I just don't know how people could do it without having that understanding or of that genre that you're in, So I think that was really
no,
cool
for sure. I mean, you have to your point, there is a cadence, there's a certain type of personality. If you're an athlete, you know what it's like to be part of a team. You know what dedication, and not that other people don't. I'm just saying there's just a certain take Jim Crane with the Houston Astros. If he's going to hire a new employee, whether it's on or off the field, he wants that employee to be an athlete. There's just something that goes with that competitiveness.
Yes.
There's something that comes with being an athlete that just makes you a little bit different.
Yeah. But
Good,
I
bad,
agree.
or indifferent. Yeah.
I agree. And I agree. And that's fine in your community.
Yeah. And how much did preparation play a role as far as a young girl, like you're making your music tape or your songs and then also watching newscasters? How much did that prepare you for did you study them actively, or was it more like you just kind of liked it and watched it? Or
I mean, that's a really good question. And I talk about this with my daughter. My daughter Kennedy's 26, and she's kind of following in mom's footsteps. She's doing some on-air things, and now it's so different because there's so many female sideline reporters and women and girls or whatever. And, I think the right answer for me to tell her and to tell you is about, yes, you have to be prepared. And especially as a female, you have to be over prepared and you have to know your stuff. And that's the right thing. But I honestly was never much of a preparer. I think earlier on, you probably, if I'm getting ready for a game, you've got to, I don't know who's on the other team. You have to study and you have to prepare. Okay. But I also think, and I don't know where it kind of happened, but I don't think I ever really tried to, and not that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make this conscious decision to be different or separate myself, which is completely opposite from what I just told you. But I feel like I just sort of wanted to tell people stories. I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. I didn't feel like I had to be the smartest person in the room. I didn't feel, look, I never, strapped one on a football field.
Right.
So I can't say, yep, I can, run this offense or whatever. But my job was to tell those athletes stories. So if I was doing an interview, whether it's at the Astros sidelines or Texans or Rockets or whatever, I was trying to hone my skills as a good storyteller, a good question asker, a good listener, and not sit there and spew my facts, and be prepared and show everybody how much I knew. So if I'm going to sit there and ask Hakeem Olajuwon a question, I'm not going to say, okay, so you were MVP and so-and-so, and have a 30-second question and say, what did that mean to you? I can just be quiet, and I can ask him the question, let him answer it. I don't have to prove to you how much I know. So it's a long way to answer your question, but I never feel like I over-prepared, honestly.
Well, I love that you talked about the story aspect of it, and I wouldn't have thought of that in the sports world, like, necessarily, but we talk about it all the time, and the entertainment, film, and media type stuff. And I even talked to production people about story, like, is integral to, like, so many aspects of life that you don't even realize. Like, to a camera operator, I'll tell them, you have a beginning, middle, and end of your camera move. You're telling a story, even with that one little action. An audio person, you're telling a story with the different tracks that are up and all that. So I'm like, there's so many ways you can apply that principle to things. And so I love to hear and people it's so much more interesting to listen to.
So much more.
You get your facts and your stats, and you hear that through the whole game. And what resonates with people is the personal side of it.
Yeah,
you want to hear, where an athlete came from, what's their favorite band, what's their favorite color, do I like the Beatles? I mean, it's the human connection of that. And you're right, everything is a story, and people want to hear the story.
Well, it's almost like now, if you look at the evolution of sports broadcasting, now they have tickers for every stat under the sun on all sides of the TV when we're watching you, you know what I mean? So it's like redundant if you're going to say the stat now, because you've been watching stats the whole game. So it's a little bit of, how do you bring that relational connectability to this facts world, And if we're honest, I mean, why do you watch sports? It's entertainment.
Right.
Yeah. No, completely.
It's entertainment.
Completely. And, I think also, in order to grow the sport to the next generation, that you've got, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids that don't have the attention span to sit through a 3-hour baseball game anymore, and, to watch all of that stuff. But if they can connect with a player and hear something that guy maybe said that resonates with them about when they were a kid, I did this or whatever, and that's my favorite player. Now all of a sudden you're connecting those kids to the player, to the team, to the sport, and you're not losing the next generation.
Yeah, that's good. I really love I think it's a perspective change that you just exposed in broadcasting. How do you look at your job as a broadcaster as a whole of what it is, and what is your main mission in doing that? Which your perspective of saying, my job is to get the best story possible out of each interviewer that I'm interviewing, right? Like, what is that I want the audience to know, is so different than like, I need to hit my mark. I need to have so many questions. It's just a different lens. It's just a different approach. Yep. It's a more relational approach of like, I can't wait to tell this guy's story. And doing this show, it's funny because we all sit around, like right before we started this episode, we all sit around and tell stories. And when we're on set, we all talk and tell stories and everything. And that was the birth of a lot of the show, was like, okay, let's just tell all of our stories and connect with this next generation and the current generation, to just encourage each other in our stories, to keep going, to keep doing, keep dreaming, keep trying, keep innovating. I would say like fashion and trends all circle back. we were at the furniture store the other day and we were walking through and it was like, why do we feel like we're in our grandparents' house right now?
Right.
We're in a new furniture store.
70s are back.
You know, so styles, I think, all come back around too, you know, even in the genre of interviewing and stuff like that. So I think it's important that we tell our stories and tell how our, you know, your approach and what you did. I think other people need to hear that. I love that you just said that and that you exposed that as the way that you thought and the way that you did things. I hope it inspires somebody else to have that same lens, to carry that out, because I think it's important and necessary and not said enough. And the way things were done, you know, it's like Dan mentors a lot around here, in the ways that he's done things with all these kids. We were just on an episode talking about LED walls and all of that. Didn't exist back when, you know, you guys all started. But then how you take a perspective that was absolutely successful, that it maybe gets lost in transition because they get so focused on the shiny thing, the new shiny thing that happened, that they forget, like, it's about storytelling. It's about relationships. It's about connecting. It's about the entertainment. Somebody once told me that you got to keep everything for its original purpose of what it was. So for me, for interior design that I did for a long time, it was like, if you're going to go in and sell a house, you got to turn every room back into the original room. So you can't take a bedroom that y'all made a gym and keep it a gym. People walking through are going to be like, what is, like, there's some reason this doesn't fit, you know? So just turn it back into a bedroom to sell it. People understand, they buy and trust what they understand, not what they don't understand. Well, television was created for information and also entertainment. So keeping it what it is and not getting sidetracked off of what it is, just makes your audience understand it and trust it and feel better in it. So I think telling some of the root of the way people have done it in the past, how do you intercede and keep that thread still going that's necessary and makes it the great thing that it is.
Yep.
Sure. Speaking of story, so do you have any good behind the scenes stories, or, you know,
how much time do you have?
Well, we like a good story. So yeah, funny or otherwise, you know, just kind of behind the scenes stuff, or
I mean, a million behind. Give me a
so, like, you know, maybe like if you're out on you're on the field somewhere and the, you know, some random person comes through the camera angle, or technical difficulties that, you know, on air while mic's not working, or I don't know. Like,
I've had all those. Yeah. I've interviewed, I was interviewing, and Jason Martin will tell you this story. We talked about our fellow audio friend.
Yeah.
I was interviewing some former athlete, I can't remember who it was, in the stands at an Astros game, and his kid grabbed the microphone, turned it upside down, and dropped it in the beer. And Jason about went ballistic.
Oh yeah.
Oh
my gosh, how did it sound? No.
I couldn't. There was nothing more I could say at that point.
That's hilarious.
Kids
will be kids.
Kids will
and
be kids.
give him a mic. Was he supposed to say something?
I don't remember what it was. I just know it ended up in the beer, and Jason's never let me forget about it. But no, kids are great. I mean, you know, for those of you that, you know, I'm one of the announcers for the rodeo, and I have been for about 15 years, and kind of, you know, in my 30-year broadcasting career, where I've interviewed probably every athlete in Houston for sure, most in the country, but I get recognized for, you're the mutton busting lady, for interviewing little 6-year-olds.
I love
right?
that event.
Yeah,
that's so fun.
But the things that come out of those little kids' mouths are unbelievable. Yes. I mean, they are just the best.
How would you give advice to somebody that's wanting to have a career like yours to prepare for the unknown? Because that's like, you got to have some wit to just know what to do, or
be on your feet just quickly.
And that kind of comes back to, you know, the preparing, and you have to know your stuff and feel confident in that. But to your point, you have to just be a little more relaxed, go with the flow, just be yourself. I mean, I tell Kennedy, my daughter, that all the time. Don't sit there. Yes, you can look at other, you know, people that you want to emulate or be like, and watch how they're doing things, but don't try to be them. There's a million of them. Right. Just be you. And just, I mean, have fun with it and listen. Don't, you know, sit there and think about, okay, what my next question is going to be so-and-so, without listening to what the person is saying.
That's good too.
And, you know, so I think it's just kind of just being authentic and being yourself, and it's just easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
We mentioned, you hit on virtual production, LED briefly, and I was just making me think, well, the sports world has changed a lot technologically, but what's the biggest thing you've seen that has changed what you do as
High
far as
def.
just high def?
We need more makeup. They
Oh,
see
yeah.
more. No,
No,
it's
I know
not a
that-
good thing.
I know.
Yeah,
I remember that was a
right?
big discussion.
No,
Yeah,
It
with
really was.
actresses and
Yep.
stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Well, that's what ProMist filters are for, and
Yeah.
good
No,
lighting.
I'm just messing with
Yeah.
you. Good lighting.
Yeah,
good
yeah.
lighting.
But I mean, have you guys? Is virtual production coming into play at all with anything you're doing, or because what you're doing is you're covering real events, so maybe not. But like as far as like any of the set design or
Yeah.
yeah,
No, not as much. All
Not as
my
much.
stuff has pretty much been live. I mean, I'm not really. I mean, I never worked with a teleprompter even. You know what I
oh
mean?
wow,
I mean,
yeah, right. Because you're
It's
just
just always
Right.
kind of being on the go. But,
Yeah.
So yeah, probably not so much.
yeah.
What do you think when you're okay, so you're not preparing much, you do have to understand the sport, but we were talking earlier about how you got the job for actually being the host for the rodeo. And you're like, hey guys, I don't really know anything about the rodeo, but I'll do it. And they're like, just treat it like a sport.
Yep.
What would be your advice on that scenario for others that are stepping into that, or how do you think you overcame that so well that you ended up landing that job for 15 years?
I think it's relationships again. I
Mhm.
mean, everything to me is about relationships. It's you hate to say it, but it is all who you know.
Yep.
It's how you treat people. It's garnering their respect. I mean, I can, if I've been in this business for 30 years and I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging or blowing smoke up my
Yeah,
dress
yeah.
or whatever that I'm not wearing. But like I have a cell phone and I can pick up the phone and call any athlete in Houston. They're going to take my call.
Yeah.
And that's from kind of cultivating that relationship over all these years, having a trust. I didn't just go into that locker room trying to get what I needed from them and not be respectful of them.
Mhm.
Not, it's just about cultivating those relationships. And so I think to your question about how do you tell somebody to, someone young coming into that business, it's just that, and it's treating them all the same. I mean, as many athletes as I could call and talk to, I can also walk around the stadium and know the first name of probably every usher in that stadium.
Yeah.
Every service
good.
worker in that
Yeah.
stadium. It's just, I don't know, kind of just genuinely caring about people and doing the right thing, being respectful, and not that you're doing it for those reasons, but then when you do need something or want something, they want to help you back.
Yeah.
And your career is going to change. Whether I was a producer, whether I'm on air, whether I'm a business owner, whether I'm hiring people, your career is going to change, and you're going to, that old adage, you're going to see the same people on the way up as you're going to see on the way down. It's just doing things the right way and respecting people. And I think that relationally, that's the number one thing.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really wise. What I'm hearing you say is, don't put your career before the people.
It won't last.
Yeah. Yeah.
It won't
And
last.
I agree. I was just in conversation with somebody today that just 1 year ago got let go of their job and was just devastated. And I was just telling him today, I was like, man, to watch the last year of your life where you're like, I'm not going to have a career in this industry. I don't know what I'm going to do. But he humbly just served others, showed up, gave a lended hand, always was working, always willing to say yes and help out, and just treated people with respect, to now shooting the top commercials and things around here. And I said, it's just been such an honor to watch you, I say love people the way you've loved people, and humbly been able to say yes to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
He put the relationships first, and he said, I just really never wanted to do anything myself anymore. I wanted to do it with community and others and foster that. And so, I do think that is a key to success. And, your career is a complete testament to that.
Well, thank you.
And so I think that's, again, can't be said enough to the generation that's coming up.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to put that career before the relationship that's at hand.
Yeah. And that's, that generation coming up, wants everything right now. It's immediate gratification. And a lot of that just comes over time. And so if you're organically doing things for the right reasons, and doing all those things, I completely agree with what you're saying.
So what's next for you? Or you have another business we're learning about it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you do now.
Yep. Well, I'll back up a little bit to go to the one in between that got me to that one. So when I left Fox, I went to work for the Houston Sports Authority, and that was a kind of a joint decision. We had talked for a number of years about starting the Houston Sports Awards, and it was something I wanted to do at Fox, and it was something that the Sports Authority had wanted to do, and we'd worked on other projects together. And so, long story short, we came together. I left Fox to go work for the Sports Authority and launch the Houston Sports Awards. And in the course of doing that, I mean, I don't know if you guys had been there or not, but it's basically kind of like an ESPYs for Houston.
Okay.
And I also created and launched the Houston Sports Hall of Fame in that.
Wow.
And Brothers in Arms, which is a foundation with Warren Moon, Vince Young, and Andre Ware, where, 3 African-American quarterbacks, all legends here in Houston, all raised by single moms. And we raise money for kids who are also participating in sports, raised in a single family environment, like all 3 of them were.
Wow.
And those were all things that kind of were created there. So that 7-year span, the Sports Awards was a huge event, and it kind of put me more in an event space.
Okay.
So to get to your question, last year, so it's been just over a year, it was August 1st we launched. My partner Holly Kesterson and I, we left the Sports Authority and we started Relevant, which the rel is for relationships and event is for events. Relevant.
Back to relationships.
Back to relationships. And it's all about utilizing our relationships to create and put on events for our clients to keep them relevant. So it's a marketing and events company. We still run the Brothers in Arms Foundation. We work with other athletes on their brand, their events, their foundations, corporate clients. We do work for the Houston SaberCats. We do we have all kinds of different things we do, but primarily playing in that event space.
That's very cool. It's a great way to pivot into something that utilizes all the things you've learned over the years and to kind of a new space.
Yeah. What are you most looking forward to with it?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Retirement? No. No.
Do we ever really retire?
Yeah,
Let's be real.
does it really?
We don't.
Let's be real.
I like it. It's different. There's, now I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And not that my schedule wasn't always in my own hands. I mean, working in TV for all those years or even in events, your schedule's kind of dictated by the teams.
Yeah.
I'm working nights and weekends and trying to raise kids at the same time. So that part of it was challenging. And now I feel like for this, I'm probably looking forward to probably having my time be dictated by my own schedule.
Yeah.
Not always, but
Sure.
a little bit more. I mean, I haven't had a spring break ever,
Yeah.
all the things that have been controlled for me. I think a little bit more freedom.
Yeah. That's great.
I'm a grandma now. I gotta have time.
Yeah.
I'm a grandson.
That's
Congratulations.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. One more. What do you miss the most?
Oh my gosh. The obvious answer would be the relationships, but I don't because I still keep them. There's a couple things. I mean, I think, I don't know if you guys, I'm trying to relate this to what you do, but being in the TV industry for all those years, when you're done and you're off the air, you're done. Like when I'm done with the game and the game's over, I go home. Doesn't matter what happened. I go to sleep because I'm not thinking about it. Because it's not going to affect me tomorrow. It's going to be a new game tomorrow. I'll equate it to being a waitress. If you're working in a restaurant and you can just be balls to the wall, busy, swamped, but as soon as your customers go home, it's over. You don't bring the job home with you.
You get to shut it off at the end of the day.
And if you happen to go on vacation for 2 weeks, doesn't matter it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Where when you transition into the corporate world, it never ends.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just you don't sleep as much.
Nope.
We relate.
There's never a finish.
Yeah.
Right.
It's never
Yes.
over. You're always working on the next project. You're trying to sell this. So I do miss that. I miss that finality of when the night's over, I'm done. And it was way more stress-free. I don't feel like I ever had a stressful day in TV. Now I'm stressed all the time.
Welcome to retirement.
Yeah.
So I miss that, but no, I miss it. I miss traveling with the Texans was one of my favorite things. You know, it was just a great schedule. You know, you fly out on Saturday, you're flying charter, and you've got police escorts, and it's just
How cool is that?
yeah. No, that is traveling with the Texans was one of my favorite things that I do miss.
Any good stories there?
Lots.
Yeah,
Lots.
I would think so.
So I'll tell you my favorite story of all, and it actually is more Astros related. I always interviewed George Bush, Dad, 41, at every home opener. And I mean, I do him at Texans and other rodeo. I've interviewed him many, many times, but always did him on opening day. And as he got older in his career, he stopped doing the interviews because things got a little tougher.
Yeah.
But he would still always interview with me. He'd always do the interview with me. And this one, and it may have been the last time I interviewed him, I'm not sure, but Barbara had left, and he has those Diamond Club seats. Barbara left, and so I went and sat in her seat, sat next to him, and we did. And you know, he's so gracious, and so, and you know, he would ask about my kids and all these great things, and so we did the interview. And we were still sitting there just kind of chatting, and my producer says in my ear, you probably know him, but anyway, he says in my ear, he goes, "Hey, we've got astronauts here. You need to go." And I'm like, I'm sitting here talking to President Bush. President Bush grabs the microphone and he goes, "She's talking to me and she's not coming back. In fact, she's taking 2 weeks off." And the producer says, "Was that really him?" I said, "Oh yeah, it was him."
Gosh,
And he says,
awesome.
"You feel free to stay as long as you'd like." And so, right about that time, Jack Ingram came out to play God Bless America for the seventh inning stretch. And he was well into his 80s, probably 87. And so I helped him stand up, and we stood there holding hands during God Bless America. And I just remember thinking at that moment, someday I will tell my grandchildren about this.
Yeah.
So
cool.
that was just one moment that stands out. So it's things like that you kind of miss. I mean, you can't recreate that, but that was
those little
that was a
kinda
great
just
one. Yeah,
bottle it up, that little
You
moment
just-
there.
You get put in some really cool situations, and if you can stop and
Take it in.
soak
Yeah.
it in and enjoy them,
Yeah.
those opportunities unfortunately don't come around for everybody.
Right.
So I feel pretty blessed to have had a moment like that.
And what they say, what life is just a culmination of a whole bunch of memories put together.
Yeah.
You know, and I used to always say, like, when we're 80, 90 years old sitting in that rocking chair, at that point, all you have is the life you've lived and the memories you've made.
Yeah.
To reminisce, to relive, to account for, to look back and say, what have I done with my life? How have I moved the needle? What's mattered? What's not mattered? And to be able to recognize moments like that, like you said, soak them in, take them in. It's a surreal moment, and just give thanks for that in your career. I think also is something that's not said a lot. You know, when we've had things come through here, it's like you get so busy doing, you know, I've never had the opportunity to just be talent, running everything. You know, it's like sometimes I tell myself, just take in this moment right now and just be thankful for right now.
Yep.
You know, because down the road, you'll appreciate this, and this. It's kind of like why we have the wall up the stairs to remind me, here's where you were and here's where you are. You know, take in those moments, remember those moments, be thankful for those moments along the way. And so I love that you said that. We could talk to you all day long. I just know
thanks.
it. I just know it. I can keep listening to your stories and stuff, but we've really appreciated your willingness to come and share stories, encourage this other generation and everybody that's listening by telling us your story. And I love your heart for relationships. I love what you've done in the industry. I know you've made a mark in it. And I'm thankful to call you a friend, and I'm thankful that you came and sat with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So how do we get in touch with you? How do we follow you and all the social things?
What is my Instagram? I think I'm Patti Smith 713. You know, the OG 713.
Yeah, there we go. That's
Patty
good.
with an I. I think that's my Instagram. I don't know. I'm not giant on social media, but
your website.
You can find me website relevant, all E's, RELEVENT, worldwide.com.
Very good.
Yes, if you need any events.
Yes.
This is who you call.
Yes. And we'll put all that information too in the bio when we drop your show, and we'll put the information to reach out to you. So
Awesome.
thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for sitting
Thanks,
with
guys.
us.
Good job. Yeah.
Until then, we'll see you on Set Life.